All right, so today I am going to be talking about COVID-19 and its impact on the residential real estate market. So, in the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a decrease in the supply and demand of the housing market. In terms of supply, because of stay at home orders and a fear of COVID spreading, people were less willing to sell houses due to health concerns. Like they didn't want people coming into their house to see it or anything like that. And then in early March and April of 2020, there was a 25% increase in the number of delisted homes from the same period in 2019, according to Redfin. And new listings were down more than 40% year over year in April 2020. And also, according to Redfin, the inventory of homes for sale decreased by 17% year over year in April 2020. And the lack of new listings, in addition to the already low inventory in the market, led to a decrease in the supply of housing. Demand also decreased because of health concerns and people not wanting to visit potential homes and lingering fears from the 2007 to 2009 housing crisis. Home buying activities like asking for agents or going on tour of houses also decreased in the early end of the pandemic between March and May 2020. Um, and house showings per listing were actually down 40% in April year over year. And other metrics like inquiries for listings or agents or offers, or like online searches for residential real estate also decreased in April. And I have illustrated the housing market graphically here. Typically, a decline in demand for new home sales would cause a drop in prices, but because of the low supply in the housing market combined with low mortgage rates, prices saw a pretty steady and unchanging trend through April and May. And as I'll talk about in the next slide, demand did recover, but supply did not, as new listings in August 2020 were only slightly higher year over year, and inventory in the housing market in August 2020 was less than two-thirds the number of houses from August 2019. So, this second resource in my lesson was the NPR Planet Money podcast that discussed the increase in demand for housing over the summer of 2020. And one of the guest speakers was Glenn Kelman, who's the CEO of Redfin, which is an online realtor. He said that he saw an initial downfall in demand for housing, but then there was a dramatic increase in demand over the summer. And over the summer of 2020, Redfin itself saw a 40% increase in traffic. They hired new agents and they even had to turn people away because their agents were so busy. Um, and pending home sales rose about 16% from May to June of 2020, which was the biggest monthly increase ever seen. Um, and Kelman said that in his 15 years of experience in the real estate industry, one of people's main factors in finding a home to buy has always been their commute to work. Um, and that has led to like these extreme bidding wars in places that are really popular, like New York, San Francisco, Chicago, places like that, places that are popular for working and living. But because of the new work at home dynamics caused by the pandemic, accompanied by shutdowns of bars and restaurants, people stopped thinking so much about the convenience factor and they started thinking about more how much space they were getting for what they were actually paying. And according to Kalman, trends in demand in the real estate market included people leaving big cities, looking for space, prioritizing space rather than location. And this all led to a decrease in those bidding wars that they were seeing in big cities like LA and New York. Um, Okay, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit about why there's such a low supply in the housing market, some of the trends and why they've occurred. So, obviously, supply in the housing market has decreased, and the New York Times article that I included in my lesson details some of the trends happening and kind of provides an explanation for why they're happening. So, in terms of supply, a majority of homeowners are baby boomers or older, which is a group that's at higher risk for severe illness from coronavirus just because of their age. And that has deterred a lot of those people from wanting to move or open their home for, potential buyers to come and see it because they're just complete strangers. They don't know where they've been. It's a health concern. And then an economist from Wharton, Benjamin Keyes, explains that it's hard right now to move along the property ladder, which is the transition from apartment to starter home to long-term home to assisted living during a pandemic, because there's so much uncertainty in terms of health and also in terms of the economy. And another economist, Ralph McLaughlin, said that the cycle of low inventory in the housing market is like a feedback loop, because when people see that supply is low in the market, they get nervous about selling their own home and they pull it off the market. And another factor in the decrease of supply in the housing market is the policy of mortgage forbearance for homeowners with government-backed loans. Um, it has been helpful during the pandemic because it's allowed people to stay in their homes when they might have lost them, but it's also meant that homes haven't been entering the market via foreclosure or forced sale, which they would have been if that policy hadn't been in place. And those are all kind of causes from the pandemic. And then so next I want to talk about things from before the pandemic that led to the low inventory. And one of those was that the inventory was already decreasing because of the housing crisis in 2007 to 2009, because it hurt the home building industry. And home building is really important to the residential real estate market because when new homes come onto the market, nobody has to move out of them in order for them to add to the inventory of the market. So it's just easier for them to get into the flow of the market. And another thing is that some of Trump's policies hurt the home building industry because his immigration policies hurt some of the labor supply, and the tariffs that he imposed increased the input costs of building. So that all hurt the inventory in the market. And then the last thing that I want to cover is what could help in the future. So when mortgage forbearance relief payments stop this year, we're probably going to see an increase in inventory, unfortunately, as foreclosures and forced sales occur. And then as we see more people get vaccinated or like big decreases in the spread of the virus, we will see people probably return to their normal home buying, shopping, listing behaviors somewhat, even though this really won't make up for the shortage in the market. And also, another interesting trend that we've been seeing is that the prices of homes are increasing while the prices of rentals are decreasing. They're diverging right now. And with the companies like Airbnb that allow people to rent out their homes more easily, we've seen actually a big increase in the number of rental properties that aren't owned by like big corporations or um, real estate companies over the past few years. But people who own those rental properties might decide to sell them instead of rent them because of the potential for profit there. So that's all I had to cover. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them.